It's Nancy welcoming you to Garden Scroll. At the end of the season, when all the flowers are gone away for the winter, I usually look back and say what I've learned that year in the garden. But last year I learned to go ahead and put my annuals away in September. But it's not September, it's October, and they're all still here. They're all still out here. I still haven't learned. Have you ever learned a lesson and then let it slip what you learned and don't do it anymore? I actually forgot that I learned it. I forgot that I made it a determination to actually do that. But I'm remembering it today. These will all have to be taken in soon. But my main reason for not taking them in sooner is because it's time to enjoy the garden, and they're supposed to be out here when I'm enjoying my garden. I want them out here. But that does not give them a good start for next year if they're out here too long, and it's probably one reason they lose so many of their leaves when I do bring them in. And another reason is because I like to have a little last hurrah or grand finale in the garden and have some of my friends and acquaintances and community and church friends to come over and have one last chance to show the garden off. But it's more than that too. I know that it's sometimes fall is at its fullest and most beautiful, and then other times it's going out. Some of the things are actually going away. Oh my, look at this. This has a little bit of I don't know. It's not a healthy look. So, see, it's getting affected by the cooler weather. I need to bring it in. I know that I do, and I probably will, but I'm still having trouble with that. I would love for all this to be out here when I have my little get together and show it off one last time. I think the garden deserves a good send-off just because I put in so much work through the year, taking care of it, making posts for YouTube. It's such a beautiful little wonder to have a garden. And another reason that I don't like bringing it in early is because then I have house plants to care for as well as outside plants to care for. So there's actually lots. There's probably even more reasons. But the reason to go ahead and bring it in is just to have that off your mind, because honestly I think about it almost all the time. Here in Oklahoma we have early frost lots of times, so they need to be put inside and out of danger. And I tell myself this every year, and then every year I wait because I think that wouldn't it be beautiful if they were out there when people came to see it, and that's what I really want. So but I also want them to be back out here next year so I can enjoy them and so I can have them to show them to you. This beautiful Schefflera. Okay, that's another reason that I hate bringing them in, because they'll start looking awful. It won't look like this inside my home. But maybe I can keep it alive, and then next summer or next spring when I bring it out again, it will fill back out and be beautiful. I've had people ask me if it helps me to garden, if it helps me to unwind, and all the work that I put in it makes me to relax. And the answer is no, not at all. No, it does not. The work is hard and physical, and although I do believe it does help me in some ways because I have arthritis, and it helps me keep my hands working where they'll be able to move. But also in other ways, it's it's hard, and it just hurts my hands and hurts my knees and hurts every joint that I have. But this is why I love it. Just this, the beauty of coming out into the yard on a pretty morning, a pretty fall morning, or even if we're lucky enough to get one through the summer, or if you're not so busy in the spring, you can look up and see the beauty of it. And just that it's there, and you can walk around in it and see all that beauty. And I love a surprise. I love the mornings that I can get up and come out and find a beautiful bloom just waiting for me. That's the part I love about gardening. Here's this beautiful variegated Swedish ivy, and people have this in their homes, and it's so beautiful. And I've never been able to keep one through the winter, never. If I do this one, it'll be my first time. So I just do not do well with houseplants at all. They don't like my house. But anyway, and I've got to get some clippings like of this beautiful Plectranthus. I would love to bring this due. It's another one I've never been able to save it through the winter, but I will try. I can't just let it go without trying. And then all the beautiful coleus. I want to take clippings of these and put them in the window in glasses and save them for next year, even though a lot of them will not make it. A lot of them will. And I will definitely want to try so I can keep some of these gorgeous colors going in the garden. This one is dipped in wine. That previous one was redhead. I'm not sure the name of this one, but it really is a prolific bloomer, very pretty. And actually down in under there is another house plant that I need to get in, as well as that beautiful corn dracena. This is Alabama Sunset. I always want it in the garden. I want each one of these in the garden again if I possibly can get them there. And there's that beautiful purple waffle plant. It's a house plant, and it needs to be inside. Here's another beautiful coleus. This one has, I think this is only the second or third year that I've had the Colorsaurus coleus in my garden, and already I do not want to be without it. So pretty. This little coleus is called Molten Lava, and I love it too. I wouldn't want to be without it in my garden now, and I've had it probably 4 years, had a start of it in the garden. I just would not want to be without it. I have a friend that came over and loved this purple heart, so she's wanting to get a start of it. And it's just fun to share and to be a part of someone's life, a part of their garden. This pretty little lantana it just did not do well this summer for me until the cooler weather came along. And now it's just spreading out and looking great all over the place. The mums have not all opened. A few of them have, but more of them have not. So there'll still be lots of beautiful color in the garden. I just need to go ahead and, well, my husband would say, bite the bullet and bring them inside so I can stop worrying about them and just worrying about if I'm going to get the job done in time. I must just go ahead and do it. Oh, but gosh, it's hard to do. This little last minute arrangement in the latter part of July has turned out to be so pretty. I thought it might, but I was a little reluctant to tell you that it would because I thought it might not too, but it did. It's just looked so good. These beautiful Zahara and Magellan zinnias that are short enough to look good in a small pot, and just they fill out and have the large, beautiful large bloom, just like a tall zinnia would have. So pretty. Don't know if this little hibiscus will get to bloom before frost comes, but hopefully it will. It's almost in bloom now. It's starting to unfurl its little bloom or big bloom. These are big, gorgeous blooms. Some more of the pretty, I call them container zinnias because that's what I usually use them for. And of course they would be gorgeous as a border too in the front. So pretty. My zinnias are winding down, but they're doing it slowly, so I'm just able to enjoy them so much. But yes, this is definitely my favorite part. My favorite part is just to come out and look at the garden, and I love showing it to you. You know, most things are better when they're shared. Even though there are some things that you just, especially if you're an introvert like me, you just want to enjoy it just by yourself or by yourself with the Lord. I was hoping more of my passion vine. There, got it. More of my passion vines would bloom. I have several, and this is the only one that bloomed this year for me. Oh, mine, I'm looking at this, and well, that's where the wind, never mind, I was afraid this one was getting bit by the cold too, but this is a wind break right there where it's broken off, but this needs to be taken inside too. I would definitely not want to lose this. You know, I don't want to lose any of it, but this is such a beautiful plant. It's such a novelty to have these little blue butterflies flying above it when it blooms. So pretty. I thought my little Alabama sunset coleus there in the middle of this pot would really shine, but it's just kind of set there. I guess my creeping Jenny is kind of choking it out a bit, but still very pretty. I love the creeping Jenny, so I can't get onto it too much for taking over there in that pot. And this is another one of the passion vine that did not bloom for me, and I was going to ask, how do you save your passion vines, because they're not winter hardy? So I have done it both ways. Bring them in the container and just make clippings in the window, and my clippings have been the only thing so far I've been able to bring back out alive. Of course, the clippings take longer to get their root and then go upward, but it does work, because my Trebolia, and that's not the way you pronounce that, I don't know how to pronounce it, but the beautiful passion vine that's purple and white and has like like a tassel, just like a little tassel hanging off of it. So beautiful. I just love it. It bloomed for me this year once, and you'll just have to look back if you haven't already seen it just to see how beautiful that bloom was. But I know that there's some other blooms that I wanted to see and I didn't get to. They didn't bloom for me this year. Another reason I need to get some of those little clippings in and see if we can have them in bloom next year in next year's garden. I can't say enough how much I love this Alternanthera. Sometimes it's like black, shiny, beautiful black. And then other times it's more of a red, and I've got some of that down just a little bit farther down in the garden, and I'll show that to you. So right here is the red. Isn't that beautiful? And I don't really know if it's a different variety of it. I don't think so, because you can tell there's some dark, and this, I think it's just depends on maybe the light that it gets, whether it's in the shade more, or I'm not exactly sure what makes a difference, but both of it is so beautiful. This is my favorite. You know that I'm partial to red, I guess. I didn't even really realize that about myself until my mother's second husband pointed that out to me, that if I got mother something, it was going to be red. So, but I do love red. I love all the colors. And red, I've said before, is the cherry on top. Here's another little house plant that needs to go inside this beautiful little candlestick or shrimp plant. I don't want to lose that. I've had some starts off of it. I gave one to my sister Rose, and I think that my sister Kathy may be wanting one of those, so I will, when it puts another little start out, probably in the spring, I will try to get her one of those. And this is more of the Purple Night Alternanthera. It hasn't done just a whole lot until the latter part of the season. It's grown and been pretty, but now it's really spreading out all over the place. But I love it. I just love it to do that. And it will also root for you, but not as easily as some of the other things like the coleus. But it will root. It just takes it a little bit of time. And sometimes, you know, in the fall we don't really have a lot of time before the weather is just too cool to be trying to build a root on a little plant or trying to have it build a root. Here I had my little flowering maple, a Butylon, in a small pot, and it has just grown so much that I finally put it in a bigger pot, and it's looking like a little tree practically. And so I'm hoping that it will also go inside and do well for me. And it usually blooms in the winter time. That may be its bloom time, its normal bloom time. And remember when we put this in spring, and I was hoping it would fill out pretty. Oh my, it has done everything that I wanted it to. It has totally covered up the little strawberry pot to where they're just like little impatiens hanging there in the air, practically in a huge, beautiful mound. Oh, I'm going to miss this. I'm going to have to take lots of pictures and look back on this through the winter. And then hopefully try it again next year, and hopefully it will work to be this beautiful another time. And this little 3-tiered pot just had the blue sedum in it all summer long, and then this fall I did put these pretty little pansies in here. Get that out of there so it'll be prettier for you, but and they do brighten it up. I love them. They also will be pretty probably all winter long and be out here in the spring when we start the garden back up again. This pretty little pink annual salvia is looking pretty this morning. This can get invasive. I've had my red to get invasive before, but that was partially my fault because when I see something so beautiful, I just plant seeds everywhere, or I used to. I'm beginning to learn not to do that because when it becomes invasive and starts choking everything else out, and that's all you have in your garden, or maybe not all you have, but it chokes out many things that you loved. It's not nearly as pretty anymore. And I see here's another little hollyhock. This is the miniature hollyhock, but it does have that disease. It's causing it to look ugly, and it's just not healthy. It's not well. I want to get these all out, and even if I have to go a year without hollyhocks, I would love to get them back in the garden where they're healthy again. And there's more of that pretty pink salvia. And the marigolds that I planted late in the season are just now beginning to open up. So of course I'm hoping they have time to really shine and then make me some seeds for next year too. This is a zinnia. This is the cactus zinnia, which I love. I love this shape in a zinnia or a dahlia. This little pot held a banana tree up until this year, and I was sure it would come back out again because it has every year, but this year it did not. Luckily, I had put in a few little zinnia seeds in there to bloom for me, so it wasn't bare and it was still pretty, but I do miss my little banana plant, even though that was another thing I had to bring in and find a spot for in my house. So it was, I don't know if I really need a banana plant, but it was pleasant to have one out here. This little pot just did not do what I thought it would. I assumed that it would just be gorgeous because it has this beautiful purple angeloni. It has a pretty black coleus, and then this beautiful little lights euphorbia. Actually, it's not called little lights, it's called diamond frost. But I always think it looks just like a little string of lights floating there, and I love it. But the little container itself just did not show off for me. My Esperanza did bloom, and I did get to show you lots of pictures of it, so I'm proud of that. And I need to take it inside. I know I need to take it inside. This time of enjoyment when the weather is nice enough that you can enjoy it and it's not so hot from that oppressive summer heat makes me just want to leave it out here and just enjoy it all that much more. Every morning, every evening, every day, I want to enjoy it. My silver sage, when I planted it, was also in July, so I didn't know if it would get big enough to make a showing enough that you could appreciate it, but oh my, I think it did. I think it's just beautiful. I love this little plant. Even my little impatiens, some of them are beginning to be nipped by the cool nights, and some of this, I thought this was from the cool weather another time, and actually I watered it and it perked right up, so I'm hoping that will happen again, but I know I won't be that lucky to have that happen each time. And look at this. This is what I wait for all summer long too are these beautiful little white tufts on the chocolate plant. So pretty. And then also a new plant for me, or I've seen this plant before, but I've never had it to do well in my garden. Never had it to actually live very long. But look at this little cigar plant. It just went pretty much all over the place from its tiny little pot. It just spread out and went. And then its root is actually in this tiny little pot down here, and it just came out and went over on this side, and it's just filled out and looked great. This year was a little different, I think, than most years. Even though it was hot, we had a cool down in the middle of July, or the end of July. I think it was the end of July. But we had a cool down due to the hurricanes that were happening on the coast, and that's just how it affected us, which was strange and wonderful for us, because we got some cool weather at a time we don't normally get it. And I think that may be what made me be able to save my beautiful Calabrachoa. And I know that's looking scraggly. You have to love Calabrachoa as much as I do to think this is beautiful, but I think it's beautiful. This is a pretty little double yellow. And then I had a pretty double pink right here, and I don't think any of this is in bloom right now, and may not bloom again for me, but it was so beautiful, and it lasted right up until now, just recently. This is some more of that pretty molten lava. And then this plant back here, I know it looks terrible. It did not do well this year, but most normally this little plant just really shines. It's the big concoleus with the huge leaves. When it does well, it is very much a shiner in the garden. But it's hard when you're just beginning time and your shutting down time kind of happens at the same time. But the garden is truly renewing itself. If you'll notice, the perennials down at the bottom, the tops are all scraggly and laying down, but down at the bottom there's brand new growth. And even when the frost comes and takes the top totally away for several weeks, the root will go ahead and build and grow its root and be safe and secure through the winter for spring when it comes back, and it'll come back from the root and start all over again. This pretty little Chinese dunce cap, which is definitely putting on its little dunce caps right now for the fall, that it will go away until it just looks like a little powdery round that looks like it's nothing, like it's a dead debris from last year's plant. But in the spring it will literally come back to life when it begins to get wet and get God's good rain on it, and it will come back to life and be beautiful again. And in the spring I wondered what I would even do with these little pots. I knew I wanted something in there, and I still haven't gotten necessarily what I just really want, but they did great for this year. I love them. And I just filled them out with petunias and profusion zinnias and some little garden art, and it's just been a little joy to come out and see. And we'll start all over again in the spring and see what we can come up with for next year's garden. These little succulents, if you remember at the beginning of the season, they just looked like there wasn't going to be enough in there to come back at all. And then it just filled out. I did put a few more little starts in here too. I can't remember which ones, but they do a lot better than you would think they would. I did put a little plastic bag over this, not to where it couldn't get rain and snow, where it could get moisture, but just enough to cover it and give it a little protection. And it came right back in the spring. This is another little pot that got a late start because I was late getting it going. By the time I get all the other part of the garden done, some of my newer pots that I'm not sure what I'll do with have to wait until later, but that worked out great too, because most of the plants that are in here I found on a sale because their season was about over. But once I put them in here, they just really picked up, and they have done very well for me. I love this little pot. I love the spike in the center, and then just the flowing, trailing vinca or periwinkle all around it. This little pot I usually just leave empty because I couldn't get anything to grow in it, and I thought, well, I'll try some of that sedum in there. So that's what I did, and it has worked perfectly. I doubt if it will live in that little pot to come back next year, but that's okay, because this will be an easy start to just dip this down in some rooting powder and put it back in the glass, and it will go again next spring. So I'll probably want to keep that in there maybe from now on. My sister actually made this for me. My youngest sister, my baby sister, made this for me. And she put a cup on it, though. And I knew when I saw that little cup there, it was, a beautiful little porcelain cup. But it didn't last long in the garden. The high winds and the hail just, it just breaks and doesn't do well. So I ended up putting this little I'll say plastic, but I think it's called a different name besides plastic. But anyway, it's very much harder to break, so it's working better for me. But had she not got me the start of it, the little cup on a pole that looked so pretty, I would not have thought of putting this in my garden, and it's a great addition. Look at this lovely pink. Isn't that a pretty pink? There's so many beautiful shades of pink, from fuchsia to just a baby girl pink. So pretty. And I love the salmon pink, the kind of warm toned pink. It's probably my very favorite. I've probably already told you before the story of pink. That pink makes me sick. I love pink. I do love pink for sure. But it does make me sick. If I'm in a room with too much pink, it just makes me sick. When our youngest daughter was probably around maybe 8 or 10, I got her a pink light bulb. And I thought, oh, how sweet, how precious. And we put it in, and she did love it. And I loved it too, having that pretty pink glow in her room. But a little bit later, she came to me and said, Mama, I don't feel well. And so I went in her room with her and laid down on the bed with her to, offer my comfort and support. And I did not lay there very long before I realized I don't feel well either. And then as I laid there a little bit longer trying to feel better, I realized it's the light, it's the pink light. And so we took that thing out. And and we both started feeling better. So we just can't seem to handle pink. And then there was the year that I put up the Christmas tree and did it in pink. It was so beautiful. I loved it. But then, the more I looked at it, the more I began to feel nauseous and a little bit like my head was kind of faint feeling. It was just not a good feeling at all. And I couldn't figure out what was wrong for a little bit, and then finally I realized it's the pink. And so I had to put a lot of white on there with it. And it evened it out a bit, and I was able to go ahead and keep my pink and white tree. So it was very pretty and we enjoyed it. But I won't do pink again as a solid pink. It will have lots of colors in there with it. But as you can tell, I still love pink. And then to top it all off with, my mama called me, and she crochets towels, the top of them, so you make them the little hanging towel. And she was doing that. She said, I'm not feeling well today. I'm using this pink crochet thread, and it's very pretty, but I think it's making me sick. And I just started laughing. Because I'm like, oh my goodness, Mama, that's where we get it. We get it from you. So anyway, the girls in our family love pink, but it makes them sick. So we have to use it sparingly. This doesn't look sparingly, does it? This is a beautiful Gara. I didn't realize how much they shine in the fall. So pretty. And lots of the mums are opening now too. I love it. I love the fall color. And I've told you this is my husband's favorite season. He says the garden looks the prettiest in the fall. Here's a few more lovely shades of pink for you. And there's my favorite shade of pink, the warm pink. And when I do the What Did Well For Me segment of my little garden scroll posts, which I usually do at the end of the season, I hope I don't forget this beautiful bougainvillea. This is another plant that may have bloomed like this because of that little cool spot we had in the middle of summer, because it's never done this for me before. It'll bloom a little bit in the spring and maybe in the fall a little bit, but this year it's had two gorgeous wave of bloom, and I just love this little plant. It reminds me of like crepe paper, like it's not even real. It's so pretty. Not to say that real is not pretty, but you can when you make something fake, you can make it at its most beautiful state where it will stay that way, but in reality they never stay that way very long. But they're always changing, always coming into something beautiful. My little castor bean has got wind blown, but it's still very pretty. Look at this beautiful cluster of seed right here in the center. So pretty. I need to get that off there though before it goes to seed, because it will drop them down and I'll have to fight them for I don't know how long, because I don't want them coming up everywhere. But I would love to have at least one, maybe two every year in my garden. They're just so pretty. And there's my beautiful bougainvillea again. I actually even put it into a larger pot this year because it needed it. Before, it's never really needed. It's been a scraggly little plant in a small pot, but this year it just had to have a bigger pot. Look at this beautiful quilled yellow mime. I just love that. I'll be glad when it fills out and becomes a really great beauty. I hope that will happen, and I think it could. Surprisingly, I don't miss my pear tree as much as I thought I would. I thought this area would look bare and not be pretty anymore without my pear tree here, but actually it still looks good. It kind of looks maybe better being open like that, but I do want to put another tree here, and I think I do want another pear tree here. I'm gonna miss it. Plus it needs the shade. I need the shade for my little plants, especially in Oklahoma. Lots of things that say it takes full sun, just they don't know Oklahoma's sun in the middle of summer, because it's just so intense that lots of things that say take full sun actually need a little bit of shade. Look at these beautiful marigolds. And this little one cluster of pink strawberry fields has done so well. My husband actually stomped all over it when he was doing the gravel for the picnic table, and it still looks good. It did lose a little bit. It's not quite as poofy and as beautiful as it was, but it's still very pretty, and it's been worth it to get some of this stuff done where we can enjoy it more. Although this has still got quite a slope, and we still want to put something that'll make it easier to walk across the pathway, like from here to where I'm standing now, and then also up the slope on this side and over on that side, so that when you come up you don't feel like you're gonna fall down in the gravel. Around the other side it's fine because it's not a slope, but when you're walking in gravel on the slope, that's not good. So we're planning on trying some just some stepping stones, maybe in like the rubber tire made stepping stones, or maybe a concrete. We'll just have to see what we end up with. But it's nice to have the picnic table where I can actually sit at it and enjoy it again. It'll be hard to say goodbye to this beautiful little strawberry drop coleus too. It's so pretty. I love how it keeps on going. Keeps on filling out. And if you think, well, this is actually looks a little smaller, it's because I've used so many little starts from it. But my starts have not done well this fall. And the reason being because it will go from cold nights to 90 and above temperatures the next day, so they just haven't had much of a chance to really get their little root in and put their beautiful foliage upward. Look at this pretty little aster here. This is a soft lavender color, where the other one that I have is a deeper, darker purple. And it's right over here. And of course, I love them both. This is that one that little rabbit was eating off of, and I put out a live cage and put him some lettuce and carrots in there, but I don't think he's even found them yet. He's not that interested. This is another beautiful chrysanthemum in bloom. And here's another one of the chrysanthemums opening up in full bloom. I was just thinking how for so many years the only creative thing I did was put my makeup on before I went to work, and worked in a factory, a boring job. But, you know, it helped pay the bills. But I'm glad that every day is pretty much creative out here in the garden. You can do things that just so much creativity in gardening and color. There's another of the pretty pink, and I'm going to take this one because it needs to be snapped off of there anyway. And I'm going to take that one for seed. Look at the differences in the colors of these two pinks. And then you might as well just add this pink right in there with it. This really soft. This is even probably softer than what I would think of as a baby pink. But it's very pretty. All of them are so pretty. And I did trim this little the coleuses in this little pot, and I think it's a lot prettier, although it hasn't, like I said, filled out well because they haven't put their roots down and really had a good chance. Like here's one you can tell is just needs to be rustled off of there, but it's still, just bringing it down instead of up high and spindly has made it look so much better. And my little angel broke off of her little wooden post, because wood just doesn't last in the garden at all. So I just kind of glued her right there onto that little plant stand, and I think I'm going to like her much better there. And this is another of my favorite. I don't know if I would put this in the pink category or in the coral category, but it's just such a pretty color. And it is time to dig the dahlias. That's another thing I have a hard time doing as soon as it should be done because they're so pretty. But we don't want them to freeze. Right after the first frost, at least, they need to be dug up and brought inside. And I've also read to put them in peat moss so that they don't dry up, because I have had some of mine to dry up, and I don't want that. I want to be able, this is probably I think this is the first dahlia that I ever purchased, and it is such a pretty little dahlia, and it's the one that's done the best for me this year. Most of my dahlias I guess they just weren't healthy enough to come up. So I guess this is why this is called Chinese dunce cap. It's just these pretty little, looks like hen and chicken rosettes until the fall, and then they put all this height up on them. I'm sure that probably has something to do with its proliferation and how it makes more of itself, but I haven't read enough of it to figure all that out yet. And this little pot has been one of my favorites, of course, mostly because of this beautiful Calabrachoa. But I also love that pretty red coleus. Some more bright and beautiful marigolds. And the cosmos are looking pretty this morning. I filled up the bird feeders yesterday or the day before, and so the birds know where it is, and they know that I'm out here in their way, in the way of them just really enjoying themselves. So that's what they're talking about this morning, I'm pretty sure, wishing that I would get out of here and give them the garden, but you know, we've got to get to enjoy it some too. Look at this beautiful clematis. Morning glories are just too hard to keep from proliferating to the point where you don't want that many of them. They'll take over everything. There's the white Gara and the salvia blooming together. And I did get this row of peonies all cleared out. As I told you, and I need to go ahead and clear out my hollyhocks, I guess, too, so that I'll get rid of all that disease. And I think my peonies had some of that disease because the foliage had turned so dark and black and ugly this time. Usually they're still just a pretty little green bush, and I usually leave them, but this time they did not look well at all. And this is the pretty black and blue salvia. It usually comes back each year for me. It's kind of a soft perennial, which means it's not extremely hardy, but if we don't have too heavy of a winter or too cold a winter, it will probably return. Lots of times we have that. If we have two frosts, it sometimes doesn't make it. If we have two late frosts, but if we just have one, it usually can make it through that too. This little peony I did not trim back, and that's because this is how it usually looks. It may have a little bit of summer damage on it, but in the past they haven't been just looking totally blackened. not our last look at the garden, but it's one of the last looks. And it may be the day that I've taken the most time before we have to start doing all the chores that we have to do to save the garden for next year. That I've enjoyed this morning very much. I wish I could do it more. But right now I've got to go in, get my gardening clothes on, and come back out and water. And it won't be long till we'll be putting everything away. I should have already got the houseplants inside, as I said at the beginning of this post, but I guess I'm kind of glad I just still have it out here to put on this post and have it right here on this record. I have set out a live trap for this little rabbit, but he's not taking the hint to get in there. He's just thinking there's plenty of other food for him. He doesn't need that stale lettuce and carrot. Please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. It's 2 days after I said I hoped this would bloom before frost. Our weather has been lovely, and it bloomed